The small apartment I found in an old, neglected building just outside the city was the most affordable option when I had to move. It was cheap and I didn't need much furniture. When I first stepped inside, the smell of mold and the cold air made me a little uncomfortable, but I had no choice. After cleaning the place and setting up my things, I felt a bit more at ease. What really caught my attention was the antique cabinet in the living room. Floral patterns were carved into its doors, and a large old mirror had been fitted inside. Because the surface had slightly darkened over time, reflections looked a bit distorted. Still, it had a vintage charm that I liked. A few days passed since I moved in. That evening, after finishing some work, I was lying on the couch watching TV. The reflection of the screen flickered across the mirror. At one point, my eyes drifted to the mirror's reflection. That's when I noticed something move behind me. I turned around quickly, but there was no one there. My heart started racing. It must be exhaustion, I thought. The next night, I noticed the reflection in the mirror was trembling slightly. I moved closer and touched its surface. It was cold. I grabbed a cloth to wipe the dusty glass. Just as I began cleaning, a faint hissing sound came from the mirror. I stepped back. The sound stopped. One night, just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard a faint whisper coming from the living room. At first, I thought it was just the wind and ignored it, but then the whisper became clearer. It sounded like someone was calling my name. When I entered the room, I saw the cabinet door half open. A bad feeling crept over me as I approached the mirror. That's when I saw a faint shadow behind my reflection. When I turned on the light, it vanished. I didn't know what to do. I covered the mirror with a sheet and went back to bed. But at midnight, I heard the soft sound of the sheet slipping to the floor. When I got up to look, there was nothing in the mirror, but a wave of fear surged inside me. The next morning, I finally dared to look into the mirror. As I examined my face, I noticed something strange. The reflection moved with a delay. I turned my head to the right, and a few seconds later, the reflection copied the motion. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then, suddenly, the reflection leaned forward toward me. I froze in place. Suddenly, the face in the mirror started changing. It was no longer mine. The eyes were darker, and the lips were slightly parted. Then a slow, echoing voice said, "I want your place." I ran to the bedroom and locked the door, switching on all the lights. My heart was pounding. I trembled in bed until morning, unable to sleep. The next day, I asked the building's caretaker about the old cabinet. His face turned serious. "That cabinet?" he said with surprise. "An old woman who used to live here left it behind years ago. She never liked looking in that mirror. Always kept it covered." When they found her, she was standing in front of the mirror, staring into her reflection. But her eyes were empty, expressionless. A cold feeling followed me back home. From that day on, I decided not to look into the mirror again. But one night, I was woken by soft rustling sounds from the cabinet. The doors were slowly creaking open. The whisper from inside the mirror was louder this time. "I want your place." I couldn't take it anymore. I smashed the cabinet. I removed the mirror and took it down to the building's basement. After leaving it there and returning to my apartment, I felt relieved. But that night, I saw the face in the mirror again. This time, it was standing right next to my bed, staring at me. Now I'm no longer sure of anything. It feels like that mirror has infected me with its spirit. Whenever I look into any mirror, those dark eyes and that cursed whisper follow me. "I want your place." Now I've removed all the mirrors from my home. But how far can one run from shadows? I know now. My reflection no longer belongs to me. When I found an old but affordable apartment close to the city center, I thought it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. The building was a bit run down. The hallways were dim, the paint on the walls was peeling, and the floor sloped slightly. But the interior of the apartment was clean and orderly. On the first day I moved in, I unpacked my belongings with great peace of mind and stretched out on the couch, happy to finally have a place of my own. Everything was fine for the first few weeks. Aside from the faint creaking of the old wooden floors and the humming sounds from the aged pipes at night, it was a pretty quiet place. The wide window in the living room overlooked the city lights. At night, I'd open the window to let the breeze in and feel safe. One night, while watching TV, my eye caught a corner of the wall. In the very corner of the living room, a thin crack had formed, as if it had just appeared. I was sure it hadn't been there when I inspected the apartment before moving in. I shone a flashlight on it. The crack was irregular and seemed to be pushing outward from within. The next day, the crack had widened. I knew the apartment was old, but a crack expanding this quickly didn't seem normal. I thought it might be a plumbing issue. Maybe water was leaking from the upstairs neighbor's bathroom. But the ceiling was dry and the wall felt warm to the touch. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt uneasy. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a faint tapping from the living room. I got up slowly to investigate. When I turned on the light, I saw that the crack had widened even more. There was now a damp stain forming around it. I also heard a soft rustling sound coming from inside the wall. The next evening, when I returned from work, the crack had grown even larger, and bits of plaster had begun to fall away. Strangely, there were now dry brown stains around the edges, like rusty water had seeped through. When I touched it, a sticky residue clung to my fingers. For a moment, I thought I saw something shift behind the wall, but I chalked it up to exhaustion. That night, I was jolted awake by a loud noise. A cracking sound from the living room made my heart race. I turned on the light and was horrified to see that the crack had become a gaping hole. A low hum was coming from within. I stepped closer and aimed my flashlight inside. Something was moving, something crawling, writhing. I took a step back. Then I heard a faint, whispering voice from deep within. "They buried me here. Let me out." Terrified, I backed away. A coldness seemed to spread throughout the entire apartment. I slammed the door and ran to my bed, leaving all the lights on. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought I could hear that whisper again. The next day, I called the building's maintenance man. The old man glanced at the wall and shrugged. "Old building. It's probably just moisture," he said. I tried to explain how large the crack was, but he didn't seem interested. I decided to fix it myself. I filled it with mortar and patched it up. But when I woke up around midnight, I saw that the plaster had split and the crack had reopened. This time there were strange markings scratched around the edges, as if someone had left signs trying to get out. On the final night, I was startled by a loud crash from the living room. I ran in, and what I saw could have driven me mad. The crack had become a wide cavity, and from within, huge white eyes were staring at me. Suddenly, the eyes moved, and a long, bony hand reached out from the darkness. Panicking, I locked the door and braced myself behind it. I could hear dragging footsteps on the other side. The whispering voice was louder now. "I want out. I've been here for years. I barely made it to morning." I left the apartment immediately, abandoning all my belongings, and moved to another city. A few weeks later, I saw on the news that the building had been demolished. During the demolition, human bones had been found behind the wall. The police confirmed the remains belonged to a man who had gone missing years ago. Now I can hardly sleep at night. The faint whispers from inside the wall still echo in my ears. I was used to living alone. After leaving my noisy family home, I had found a small apartment in this old building just for myself. The place was on the 7th floor and had a large window overlooking the city. At night, turning off all the lights and watching the faint glow of the street lamps gave me a sense of peace. One night, unable to sleep, I sat on the armchair by the window, watching the outside. The street was quiet, a few cars slowly passed by. Then I noticed something move in the empty lot directly across from the building. I looked closely and saw a silhouette standing right in the middle of the lot. I couldn't make out the face in the darkness, but it felt like it was looking directly at me. I felt uneasy and closed the window, retreating inside. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been just a dream. But that night, again unable to sleep, I looked out the window and saw the same silhouette. This time it was closer, near the corner of the sidewalk. A cold sweat ran down my back. I turned on the light and the figure disappeared. This continued for several nights. Each time it was a little closer. Eventually, one night it was standing right outside my window. I froze. Its face was now visible, pale, with hollow black eyes. It leaned in and silently watched me through the glass. I ran to bed and hid under the blanket, my heart pounding wildly. I didn't move until sunrise. When daylight filled the room, I cautiously approached the window. No one was there. I felt relieved until I noticed something odd. Handprints, as if someone had touched the glass from the inside. From that day on, I couldn't find peace in the apartment. I was scared to look at the window at night, but curiosity always won. One night, I gathered all my courage and sat in front of the window. I turned off the lights and started watching the empty street. At first, there was nothing. Just as I began to relax, a fog appeared on the glass, and slowly, a handprint emerged within the mist. I froze. I blinked and looked again. It was still there. I turned on the light and rushed to the window, but the print had vanished. My hands were shaking. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I tried to forget everything, but when I returned home that evening, I saw a faint face reflected in the corner of the window. At first, I thought it was my own reflection, but the deep emptiness in the eyes and the pale skin. No, it wasn't me. That's when I realized the face wasn't looking at me. It was looking into the empty room behind me. My heart nearly exploded as I turned around. No one was there. When I looked back, the face was gone. That day, I decided to leave the apartment. I moved to a new city, thinking I could escape this curse. A few weeks passed, and everything seemed fine in the new place. It had a big window with a street view, and at first it gave me comfort. But at night, I began to feel the same sense of unease again. One night, well past midnight, I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard a soft tapping on the window glass. I thought, not again. I got up and walked slowly to the window. There was nothing on the glass. Outside was quiet and still. I took a deep breath and went back to bed. Over the next few nights, the tapping returned. Every time I checked, there was no one there. But on the fourth night after the tapping, I noticed a clear handprint on the glass. That same familiar print. The fingertips were perfectly defined. My hands trembled as I touched the glass. Then the print faded away. One morning, I woke up to find a small note on the window ledge. No matter where you go, I'll find you. Panic set in immediately. I gathered my courage, left the apartment, and decided to start over in yet another city. But now, in every new home, with every new window, I live in fear of seeing that face again. In the last place I moved to, I noticed something else. Even after wiping away the fogged handprint, the same mark reappeared a few days later, as if the shadow following me kept leaving signs on every new window. I can no longer sleep at night. One morning, I found another note outside my window. I'm always watching you. That's when I realized this face wasn't just a ghost. It was a cursed entity that carried its shadow wherever it went. Escaping it was as impossible as escaping my own shadow. Now I know I will see the same face in every window of every new home, even if the window is closed. Every night as I wait for that face to appear again, an endless fear grows inside me, because no matter where I am, it always finds me. It slips out from the shadows and watches me silently from the other side of the glass. I am not alone. Never.